Good morning. Welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. I am Bob Lear, the Vice Chair. Mr. Messina is under the weather, so I will be running the proceedings today. And the first part of that is reading the note from the Governor. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945-4410, conference ID 507-443-578 hashtag, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Well, this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We'll post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. The first order of business is a roll call to see if we have a quorum. Mr. Messina, I believe, is absent. Ms. Tennyson?
Here.
Mr. Lear is here. Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Sandy Porter?
Here.
Stephanie Hamilton?
Here.
And Clerk Barr?
Here.
First, I guess for public interest purposes, Mr. Stevens, who had been an alternate for over a year, has now been promoted by the Select Board to be a full-time member. And we still have room for 2 alternates if members of the public are interested in applying to that, through the Select Board's offices. Next item is the minutes from December 3rd, which are extensive. And I didn't see any issues with it, but anybody have any questions or comments about the minutes? Any
Motion that we accept the minutes from December 3rd. Second. Second.
All right, roll call. Ms. Tennyson?
Yes.
Mr. Lear is a yes. Mr. Porter, or Mr. Stevens, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
And Ms. Barr?
I have to abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay. All right, the first public hearing is 61 Olifamets Lane, which is application 24-036, which is a notice of intent to partially demolish a building at 61 Olifamets Lane, doing mainly window work from what I saw yesterday at the site visit. So who's here for 61 Olifamets Lane? Up to the podium, please. Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Tell us who you are and what you're proposing to do.
Okay, my name is Diana Zaglio, and I am an architectural designer at McPhee Associates, and we are working with Kyle and Abby to replace some windows and also add some different windows at their home at 61 Olifamets.
All right, want to take us through the drawings to detail what you described in general?
Absolutely. So what you see is obviously the existing home. The top 2 elevations are the ones that we will be touching. On the front elevation, which is the very first on the upper left, we're just replacing the 2 windows on the 2 green colored windows on the bottom on the right with the same type of window, matching the size and the grille pattern and replacing the shutters. So, putting the same shutters back. So we are not really changing anything on that elevation other than putting in new windows because those 2 have some rot and are not in very good shape. The larger change will be on the right elevation, which is the water-facing elevation. And in this case, all the windows that you see there on the existing are being removed. And then would it be possible to look at the proposed? Would that be, okay, so what we're proposing also on that same elevation would be to replace the windows that you saw on the other with the new windows that you see here. And the idea behind it is to gain them some more light and view from their small home, but facing the water. They'd like to bring in more light and be more open to the water. So on the bottom, we're proposing 2 double hungs with the 2 picture windows in the middle. And on the upstairs, the wall you see there with that window, it's all flush anyway. It's a single wall as is, but there was a piece of rake trim coming down, kind of just attached on. They have like a false rake there. So we would remove that piece of rake in order to gain them light, that is a primary bedroom / office space. So they're hoping to bring in a little more light into the upstairs. So that's basically the extent of work that is being proposed. There would have to be some removal of wall stud in order to fit the windows. The windows on the bottom are a little taller and a little wider overall, if you take it as a whole. And on the upstairs, we just had 2 double hungs, so we are obviously removing some wall on the right in order to extend the windows off to the side in that manner.
And does the footprint remain the same?
The footprint remains the same. The footprint remains identical.
And
No
the
change.
ridge height remains the same, too?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Ms. Porter?
Excuse me, what percentage of material will be lost?
So I had, after we met yesterday, I did calculate the number. I wasn't sure if it should be in square feet or cubic feet. It's a wall. There's nothing on the floor that's changing. So if I take the cubic feet of wall stud that's coming out, it's 19 cubic feet. I mean, the footprint and the floor area remains identical. So I wasn't sure what's the best way to calculate when you're just removing the 2x4s, or, well, we can't tell exactly, but what's in the wall. Does that make sense? I wasn't sure how to calculate a percentage of change, because it's really
Well,
more.
it is confusing. This is part of the Cape Cod Commission regulations.
Okay.
And it talks about not removing less in order to not have to go to the Cape Cod Commission.
Okay.
It needs to be a change of less than 25% or less. So,
What?
but it's less of the floor space
Right,
by square footage, which makes no sense if you're talking about
a wall.
a wall.
So in this case,
it's-
we're not changing any floor space, and even if you just took the wall, it's 19 cubic feet, so there's no way that would be more than 25% if we somehow measured just the walls, but that's why I had written down
No,
0 for demolition. I mean, I know we're removing windows and wall, but we weren't changing anything in the floor.
Okay, that makes sense
If
to
that
me,
makes
because
sense.
I've always been confused by the regulations, so. Anybody else with a question? Nancy?
I just wanted to ask, are the windows that are being removed, are those original to the, do you know when they were installed, those
So
windows?
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. My understanding is they're not looking at the historical documents that came with the house. It was originally, I think, more of a utilitarian building, being down by the water in that area. There were obviously a lot of fishing like shacks and storage areas. At one point, I read it was like a butcher shop. It's actually kind of interesting history of the building. And somewhere, I think in the 40s, someone came along and put dormers on and put, a bunch of double hungs and turned it into a year-round home with heat, and that was documented. I can't remember exactly if it was like 42 or 43, but there was something about that. So what's there now are not original windows. Yeah. But they've been there for a little while, obviously. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? We have anybody in the audience? Yes, sir. You won't show up unless you're,
Yeah. Hi. Should I give you a spot there?
So my name is John Rourke. I live here half the year. I've been coming here since 1966. I used to live in the old village up and over where my family rented for 20 years the Rolfe Cottage down at the end of Anderharding's Lane that went in the drink in 1987. Interestingly, it had 3 beautiful windows right down there in the beach, like the proposed ones, which I'm very happy to see. 2 years ago, I bought the Spalding and Doris Dunbar's old home with a windmill, 2 houses away from where Kyle and Abby are. For what it's worth, I don't know Kyle and Abby. We met because Kyle had a harness with a cat at the end of it, and I had my 10-pound dog with a harness and cat. My dog and I are kind of looking at each other in confusion about this, but we really don't know each other. But I saw this letter going around yesterday, and I sent in one as well. So I appreciate all the work that this commission does. I'm a bit of a curmudgeon at some of the things going around that are happening in Chatham in terms of architecture and design. But I live 2 houses away, and I think this is a beautiful proposal, and I hope it passes, and I'm here just to give my support to them and your proposal here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Ms. Briggs?
Hi, Ellen Briggs, Protector Pass, and my question is, why aren't you using window panes for energy efficiency? Why big, open windows?
So window panes.
Window pane, oh, sorry, you can't hear me? You have to
Oh,
be
I'm
here.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes. So the windows will all be equally energy efficient in terms of how they're manufactured now. With today's code, they have to have, the gas in between and many layers of glass. Those particular middle ones, because of the size, will be the Anderson A series, which are even, they're like very highly rated in terms of energy efficiency. So the glass is Kyle and Abby's preference in terms of visibility and openness, but in terms of energy efficiency, they do need to meet code. And
All right,
then
well,
it should be
speaking
the same.
from
Yeah.
looking at historic houses, they all had window panes? The ones you're removing have window panes?
Yes,
And so well, now it's a shorescape versus a streetscape.
right, yep.
We have a house that has all windows across the back, and it's all window panes. We can see everything
Yep.
really well. So I'm just wishing that that look was continued.
Okay.
That is my comment.
Okay, anybody else in the audience? We have some letters of support up here, which Ms. Barr will put into the record.
Okay, this letter is from Ellen Downing Gould, 70 Agnes Lane, Chatham. To whom it may concern, I own the property located at 63 Eliphamitz Lane. I'm writing to express my full support for the partial demolition project and window replacement proposed for 61 Eliphamitz Lane, Chatham. The proposed project is a welcome improvement and enhancement to the neighborhood. This letter is from William Lightfoot of 55 Eliphamitz Lane, Chatham. We have reviewed the plans for replacement and modification of the waterside windows at our next-door neighbor's house at 61 Eliphamitz Lane and fully support these modifications and urge you to approve their application. This is from John Rourke and Brooke Thomas, Port Fortune LOC, 51 Eliphamitz Lane, Chatham. I am writing to support my neighbor Kyle Gould and the proposed architectural changes at 61 Eliphamitz Lane in Chatham, Mass. I have lived in various dwellings in the Old Village neighborhood, including at one time 61 Eliphamitz, since 1966. In 2022, I purchased the home via Port Fortune LLC at 51 Eliphamitz Lane, located very close to the property in question. Throughout these many years, I have remained committed to preserving the authentic, historic character that makes this part of Chatham so distinctive. Although I am not personally acquainted with Kyle Gould, the modifications he is proposing appear thoughtfully conceived and respectful of the area's scale, materials, and tradition. Rather than introducing incongruous features, the plans show a careful adherence to the timeless look and feel of Old Cape Cod. In this way, the proposal strikes the right balance, updating the property for modern use while preserving the qualities that give our neighborhood its enduring charm. Thank you for your consideration. I encourage you to approve these plans and uphold the tradition of tasteful, historically sensitive architecture that defines our area of Chatham. And then finally, from Robert and Pamela Vallot, we have reviewed the plans for window replacement and reconfiguration of the dormer at 61 Eliphamitz Lane with Kyle Gould, and we completely support the project they are proposing. The proposed design is well thought out, extremely tasteful, in good keeping with the neighborhood, and is substantially more aesthetically pleasing than the current configuration. which, if we recall correctly, only dates back to staff and Betty Davis's renovation in the winter of 1998. Thank you for your attention, and please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions.
Just for the general disclosure purposes, Mr. Lightfoot is my wife's cousin, so I'm very familiar with that building down there. Anything else from up here? Any feelings about, first of all, historical significance? So, well, I will suggest then,
Are we open for discussion right now?
yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I like the owners and I like the property a lot. Having been through this before with Anderson Windows, the prior owner of a mill that we rescued, put in Anderson Windows. And every time somebody comes there, every time a preservationist comes there, they look at it and they kind of, nothing against Anderson, it's just that this house loses its cottagey look. And I just wish that they'd maybe involved a preservationist or looked at some other options. So that's all I have to say. So don't take those necessarily as negative comments. I just wish they'd looked into it a little more.
I happen to agree with Robert Stevens on that. It's, and Ms. Briggs, when you take out the window panes, it changes the look. It loses the look of a cottage. Not a deal breaker, but loses the look of a cottage.
Steph? Janet?
I would agree that, and having been through a historic renovation myself in New York, but about the panes, window panes, but so I think that it will alter the historic look, but I don't think it will alter the historic significance of the project. And so I would support it, but I would encourage you to contemplate possibly adding panes. You can see just as well everything with the panes, is my suggestion.
I agree with all the comments, but I also agree that I don't believe the changes will materially change the historical significance, especially since it appears that the materials are not original and have been changed at least once in the past, if not more times.
I tend to agree with all of that. I think it would look a little better with more panes in it, but it's still, that's kind of a design thing as opposed to something that would cause us to turn it down, but certainly like the applicants to consider that. First of all, we need to find that it's historically significant, and I will suggest that we find that the building located at 61 Olifamets Lane is historically significant because it is in whole or in part 75 years old or more. It's listed in an area of state register historic places, which is the Old Village. And we also find it's associated with one or more cultural, economic, and personal events in the history of the town. And it does possess architectural value or significance in terms of its period and style as a modified fishing shack. So that's my motion. And we'll do a roll call.
Second it.
Thank you. Mr. Messina is not present. Ms. Tennyson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Ms. Barr?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes also. Secondly, we want to address the question that's already been referenced as to whether or not the proposed work will materially diminish the historic significance. And I again suggest the motion that the proposed work to be done dated this date will not materially diminish the historic significance of the building. Therefore, the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Tennyson,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Barr,
Yes.
and the acting chair also votes yes. So, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
All right, next up, not quite so simple, is 50 Stetson Cove Road, 2 buildings, historic structure and a bunkhouse. This was last before us on November 19th, and I think it's fair to say the commission expressed some confusion as to exactly what was being proposed with the various pieces of property and where they were going. Mr. Riley agreed on behalf of his client to bring some further information to us, which we have. And Mr. Riley, you...
Good morning. Bill Riley on behalf of Brad Watts. One of the things that I neglected to mention at our last meeting is that Mr. Watts has 2 brothers, and his parents directed through their trust that the property be divided, and each son was to get one of the lots. Brad thought that he would like to try to save this building, so he's moving this building to his lot. And the reason I think that's significant, if one of the pieces of information we sent, I think either Christina or Annie can show this, is the proposed relocation. Do you have that in? Okay, so if you look here, see the relocated front house. So right now, you can see that it is adjacent to, a property line. The property line runs through the bunkhouse and through portions of the, the attachments, the outbuildings of the main house. So he's obligated by the zoning bylaw to move the house so it complies with the zoning bylaw. And so he elected not to attempt to move the balance of the buildings. So it's a financial consideration, among other things. Simply bringing the original building over adds $150,000 to his costs. And so, he really wants to save the original building, but the outbuildings in the bunkhouse don't have the same significance for him, and he doesn't have the room on his lot for them. So that's why the proposal you have that's before you now. Karen Kempton is here, our architect, and I'm going to ask her to explain the relationship of the rear addition to the main house. She knows you have a concern about the ridge of the addition being visible, and so I'm going to ask her to address that. Karen?
Can I borrow this?
You may.
Can we go to the right elevation? The one, yes, the one that was just submitted. So I believe what you couldn't see before when you were looking at the garage addition to the existing house is that there's a farmer's porch sort of connector piece in the middle, so that you will see that right side of the existing antique. The existing windows will remain in the same place. So we're not pushing a house totally against the existing house. Right now, the ceiling height on the second floor of the existing house is very low. You hit your ceiling on the beams. That is why we need a higher ridge height for the second floor of the addition. And the idea was, if we can go to the front elevation, was to make the garage look barn-like with a higher ridge. And then the addition would be actually just behind the barn. if we go to the rear elevation, I think there was a before and after. Yeah, right there. So if you look, okay. So here's the existing house right here. See the peak of it? This is a later addition, and that later addition roof line continues across the back of the existing house. So you don't see any of the existing antique. The other side of it, this is the addition that was done previously. Again, you don't see any of the rear wall of the existing antique. On our proposal, you will see this part of the wall of the existing antique because we've removed this piece right here. So this ridge line will be the original ridge line that's right here. The additions to the rear of the house, every peak will be below the ridge of the existing house. The only higher piece will be behind the barn or what we're calling the garage. If we can, let's see, and then I think we discussed too that we are adding a dormer on the back, which is right here, and that'll be on this part of the house. But again, keep in mind, this is not part of the existing house. This was an addition that was done later that pretty much covers up the back of the existing house. If you have any questions, I'm available for them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you explain about the chimney? It looks like you're removing it, and I wondered why.
The chimney is in the middle of the second floor, so you have to walk around it. It's not in a great location. We will be rebuilding a chimney to match it exactly. That's something we've done in other older homes because the chimney was, as you know, right in the middle of the living space. So from the exterior, it will still remain the same look.
Right, but you're taking out all the historic material from the original chimney all through the house?
We're taking out the masonry. They are saving the mantle and the paneling that's around the chimney for reinstallation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to find the comparable elevation, I guess, from the whole house elevation from your previous submittal. Did you change anything from the previous plan, or is this a
It's
better
the same plan.
explanation of it?
No, we did not. This is the same plan.
Okay.
You can see in the center what I was discussing, the farmer's porch here. That's that section that I gave you.
Right.
So you can see the exposed corner board of this side of the building and the windows that are there right now.
Okay. Any other questions from the group? Ms. Hamilton?
I'm looking at this, so the garage will be taller than the house?
That is correct. So we can get second floor livable and legal headroom up there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. And the bunkhouse is not in our purview, I guess you're saying, because it's too new?
Well, that's our opinion. I mean, it's under your jurisdiction because it's over 75 years old. But it's also located on the new property line. So it has to be moved, and candidly, they have no interest in that building.
Is there anything that would make it historically significant other than its age?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can deal with that part first, which is the 50 Stetson Cove bunkhouse. And I would propose a motion that it is not historically significant. We'll see how that goes. I move that Chatham Historical Commission finds that the bunkhouse located at 50 Stetson Cove Road is not historically significant because it does not meet any of the definitional criteria in section 158-2 A, B, or C of the bylaw. Therefore, the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
I'll second.
And the roll call is Ms. Tennyson.
Yes.
Mr. Lear votes yes. Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Ms. Porter.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Barr.
Yes.
Now, the next piece is the main house that Ms. Kempton has been describing. Any thoughts on whether that will materially impact the historic character of that building? Mr. Stevens, you want to start with that? Or?
Bob, I haven't seen this property. Sorry, Bob, I have not seen this property.
Okay. Then I won't press you. Ms. Porter?
The front part of the main house is going to remain the same, existing proposed front?
Yes,
Okay, it's all in the back.
it's all in the back and the right side.
Okay. It's a lot of house. That's all.
Ms. Hamilton?
I asked my question.
Ms. Dennison?
Well, it's going to alter the historical significance, but at least they're saving as much as they can save, more than the last round. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Barr?
Well, I guess the chimney bothers me, clearly. It's original, it's very, very old. It's the heart of an old historic cape. And we're not just talking about visuals. What we're interested in is the significance of original materials. And that house, we really appreciate the idea that they're seeking to move the core of the old structure rather than demolish it. I feel like getting rid of the chimney, that it's not just the little piece that shows above the roof line. That's visual, that's exterior, it's important, but it goes through the whole house. And that is historic, significantly historic materials that when you go into that house are still the heart of the old part of the house. So I'm having a hard time saying that the changes do not materially change the historical significance of the house, although we do appreciate the effort and the cost that it takes to move it instead of raising the whole thing.
Well, I thought the primary function of the Historic Commission dealt with the exterior of the building.
It usually does. I guess there could be some exceptions, but you're correct in that. And my comment is, I guess I'm still a little bit troubled, as I mentioned at the previous hearing, that the mass from the rear has been substantially changed. Yes, you can tell where the historic part is from the front, and how much weight we should give to the waterscape, I guess, is the question. And I don't, not having noticed that house in the water, I can't say that I have a feeling one way or the other, except it is going to be significantly different.
I think that's accurate, but I think it's important to remember, we're not in the old village. So this is an election that the family has made to preserve the bulk of the original house. And they're happily accepting the cost associated with that. I think while we always expect the Historic Commission to be concerned about loss of materials and changes in historic structures, We also think the Historic Commission should be considering the efforts that, in this case, the family's making to preserve this and not impose, an additional economic burden on them by imposing a delay. Thank you.
Can I point out something as well?
Yes, go ahead.
So if you see the existing addition in the back, that's 50 feet long. Our addition is only 16 feet off of the back of the antique house. Yes, we are going up 2 floors, which this is only 1 floor, but our new lot, we don't have the depth to be able to save the house and put that long L on the back of it, because we'd be in the 50-foot setback from conservation. So the idea was to go up to be able to save the existing house and make it fit on the property.
Yes, Ms. Thompson.
So in other words, so where the chimney is, that's where the staircase, so you really have no choice, but do I understand correctly that the staircase is there and you have to walk around it, so it's not really a safe place to have the chimney? Is that correct?
Well, we're putting
Or-
in a new staircase that's legal where the existing staircase is. But presently, there are 2 bedrooms on the existing 2nd floor. We're turning that into 1 bedroom, so that the other bedrooms can have higher head height and be legal in the new part of the house.
I
And
see.
that chimney is in
In the way,
that location.
I see. Thank you.
I just want to clarify something, just from Bill's comment, that it's exterior materials. According to the bylaw, historically significant materials are exterior or structural materials, and I believe a chimney is part of the structure of a historic house. So I just wanted to make sure everybody considers that.
No, what I said was your primary function deals with the exterior.
Yes, or structural materials,
Yeah, and this
demolition.
chimney is not a structural material.
Okay,
The
well, we
chimney
can do
doesn't
that.
support the building. The framing, that supports the building. That's structural.
Okay. I would consider it structural.
Anybody in the audience have a comment to make? Ms. Briggs?
Watch out.
This will be quick. I appreciate the sensitivity to the historic value of this house. I know it's hard to do it, and I've watched a lot of historic houses be altered for convenience. I've watched chimneys be removed for the very reasons you're talking about, and one was removed and wasn't supposed to be removed, and then they put another chimney in its place. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And I've also been in a historic house where the chimney goes right, through the center. That was the centerpiece of the interior. And the beautiful wood floors were around it, and people had to walk around it. But it was a wonderful interior element for those living there, and they've kept it. I appreciate, again, that it's not easy to sort out all the desires of the client, but that chimney is, I think, structurally important, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I would hope that at least the top part could be saved, because I wonder where those bricks are from. I wonder if they're Brewster, Barnstable, were they Brewster bricks originally made on the cave. So just consider that. And again, I just want to say that I appreciate the challenges that you keep trying to sort through. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the commission? All right, let me try a motion here, see how that goes. I move the Chatham Historical Commission finds that the building located at 50 Stetson Cove Road, the main house, is historically significant because it's in whole or in part 75 years old or more, and it is also associated with historical persons or events of the town, and has architectural value or significance in terms of its period, style, and method of construction.
Second.
Okay, let's do the roll call. Ms. Ms. Tennyson?
Yes.
And the vice chair also votes yes. Mr. Stevens, you,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Ms. Barr?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, and more significant, the Chatham Historical Commission also finds the work, proposed work to be done dated,
What's the date of your plan?
look at December 9th, 2024, which is Ms. Kempton's most recent letter, will not materially diminish the historic significance of the building, and therefore the commission does not impose a demolition delay. All right, back around again. Ms. Tennyson. Oh, I need a second, sorry.
Second.
Ms. Tennyson.
We're saying that it's not going to materially
Right.
change the, do I have to vote first?
No.
Let me think. Oh, God. So, So what would it mean if we didn't approve this? It would mean rethinking the
It would mean,
location of the chimney, possibly.
Or the demolition of the entire structure at the end of your demolition delay.
A demolition.
That's your consideration today.
A demolition delay.
well, that would be a different motion, but that's,
Oh, so what's this motion again?
this is that the changes they're proposing is, will not materially diminish the historic significance, and we do not impose a demolition delay. If this motion fails, the alternative would be it does materially diminish, and we would impose a demolition delay if amount we determine.
Wow. Well, it's going to affect its historic significance. Am I voting yes or no? Thanks,
Yes.
guys. You know what? This is a hard one for me. So if I vote yes, then they go ahead.
Well, and the rest of the commission does.
No, but I mean, my vote would say they could go ahead,
Yes.
the way they proposed it.
Yeah, or I can change the order too, if Ms. Porter would like to go.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this. Who wants to talk, Sandy?
This is really sort of a catch-22. I agree with Nancy, the importance of the chimney. It's sort of the story for want of a nail. So even though I really wish you'd keep that chimney, I will support this. I'd rather save the house and
Right.
lose the chimney than lose the house over this.
Well, if I could make a comment, Brad Watts is watching today, and we'll discuss with him the possibility of the cost. But you have to remember, the reason they put the chimneys where they did is that was the central heating system. And amazingly, we have a new heating system. And the staircase that goes around it is not code compliant. And so, it's a safety issue for elderly folks like me who might be walking up and down those stairs. So those are the considerations the family has.
I don't normally like to make a single point as opposed to saving a whole house, something like this. This is one of the oldest houses we have left in Chatham. Okay, we're not talking about a 1930s structure, something that's barely over the 75-year limit. We're talking about well over 200 years old, right?
Right.
So there are very few of these that are intact the way this one is intact. Even though it's had additions added to it, when you get into the heart of that cape, which we are very, very glad that you are trying to save, it is one of the oldest structures in town. The chimney materials, as people have mentioned, are very, very, very old. They're not available anymore. They're gone, they're gone. Doesn't matter if it looks the same. I know I'm belaboring my point, but that, I believe that is the reason we're having such a challenge, is this is not something that exists all across town, and oh yes, we've lost one. This is a very rare breed, and it's a difficult decision. Are you open to discussing it, or to, you know?
Well, yeah, sure, I'll talk about it all day long if you want.
Oh, no, I meant is there, is there,
Does Brad have his hand up, or, because I see
don't know.
his being highlighted?
I turned on the microphone, can you hear me?
No.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Very faintly.
All right, anyway, just 2 points. One, Bill mentioned $140,000, $150,000 more to do this. It's actually $450,000 more to do this. And we would, this, I can tell you as well that these bricks are not original bricks, that they've obviously been repointed and repaired over the series of the house. I don't know that we've done any since my parents bought it in the 70s, but you look at the bricks, they're not all old. And we absolutely, especially me, want to maintain, this original house. And in fact, from the outside, with this addition, replaced with a new addition will be, preserve the view of the old house even better than it is now. And this is a concern of ours. But if, it's not, you're not going to okay it, then we won't. We'll probably tear the house down and rebuild it.
So moving on, Ms. Hamilton.
The thing is, are we trying to save the house, or are we trying to just save the chimney? Because that's what it's coming down to.
Well, we could potentially, I'm not recommending it, impose a demolition delay and see if the applicant can come up with a different design that gets what things they want done accomplished without having to take the chimney
But the
out.
demolition delay would just delay it, not
Well,
stop it.
maybe, but we can't stop it anyway.
Right.
So.
I would love to keep the chimney looking the way it looks if we move it. I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between the chimney that's there now and the chimney that would be there if we moved it, from the outside anyway. I'm not sure how old that chimney is on the roof. It doesn't look like it's 250 years old. It's in quite good condition.
It's definitely,
Is there a chance of using the bricks from this chimney in the new chimney?
We
I
can
would say-
inspect them.
Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes.
Janet.
Then I think I have to agree with what my colleagues are saying and what Sandy and Stephanie are saying, and Nancy, that, and who, if it were the original chimney, would it even be safe to leave it like that? You know what I mean? If it really were 250 years old, I'm not so
Right.
sure it would be. So as much as it, so I guess I would say I would not impose a demolition delay, would be my vote, however that goes.
Well, that would be a yes on the original motion, I think.
Okay, my answer to you is yes, Bob. Back to the vote.
Moved around here. Nancy, your feelings on it? Chimney, no chimney?
I've shared my feelings. It would be nice to have had some presentation regarding whether the historic materials were there or not in the chimney. I mean, it would be nice to know if it is significant or not. But I think I've shared my thoughts on it, and I still haven't decided how I feel about the ultimate vote.
Well, my inclination, just to complete the go-round. Robert, did I go ask you?
I haven't seen this property. Can I abstain? I know how difficult this is. I can see angst on all your faces here. We're not happy.
You can abstain, yes. No, I know, I'm just trying to,
I'd rather save the house, would be in the broad picture. But again, I have not visited this property. I think it's unfair to me to make a handful of negative
all right.
comments.
Stephanie, you wish to vote now?
I'm going to vote yes,
Okay.
and I'm going to agree with what Bob says, that save the house.
All right. Ms. Porter? It's time for voting.
I thought I started this.
I did, but then the discussion continued.
I'd rather save the house.
Okay, so that's
A yes.
That's a yes, all right. And I vote yes also. I think they've done their homework as to what makes sense, and imposing a demolition delay would just be imposing a delay and wouldn't get us anywhere. So I'll go along with the yes vote, and you, I take it, already know?
I can't say that it's not diminishing the historical significance of the structure. I vote no to that and yes to no demolition delay. So you can,
Okay,
see how you decide to do that.
I think that covers it. Go. Okay. Mr. Riley, thank you.
Well, and
And Ms. Campbell.
we really appreciate the thought process and the time and effort that the members put in. And we will be reviewing with Brad, the condition of the chimney and the bricks. What Karen just told me is there was an historic house on Seaview. Is that 90 Seaview?
Fox, yeah.
Yeah, 90 Seaview. And they thought it was an historic, and they took apart the chimney and they found cinder blocks inside forming it. So we really don't know what's in there.
We would love if you do find that there are significantly historic materials, if you can reuse them, that would be great.
I'm sure Brad is willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and yeah, we'll do it as long as it's safe.
All right, where are we going here? Okay, the 1533 Main Street Housing Development is up next. Who's here for that?
Okay. Hello, my name is Rio Sacchetti. I'm a developer with Penrose. I'm joined here by the architect for this project, Paul with Union Studios. We have a colleague who's remote who will be running through this presentation for us. And we also have some other folks online, we have our landscape architect, historic consultant, and civil engineer as well, in case any questions come that we're not able to address ourselves. I'll give you a little history of why we're here. So Penrose is a affordable housing developer. Our office is in Boston. We responded to an RFP that the town put out to build affordable housing on this site. So the town recently purchased the site from a private seller with the intention of using it to build affordable housing to address the housing crisis. They put out an RFP for developers, which we responded to. That was earlier this year. We were selected as the developer for this site and had entered into a land development agreement with the town to build the affordable housing units that we had proposed. This is the development team associated with the project. Union Studios, Paul's here with me now. Our civil engineers, Horsley Winton. We have Innova as an energy consultant, Crowley Cottrell, landscape architect, NEI as a general contractor, and Penrose Management Company would be the manager of the development once it's built. It's our affiliated management firm. So we self-manage primarily, for the most part, every single every project we develop. So we don't just build it and leave. We're there long-term, and we're there on site. Joe, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we didn't have the historic consultant on the earlier slide for the design team, but it's Maureen Kavanaugh with PAL. She has worked recently preparing a PNF, project notification form, which was sent to Mass Historic. The affordable housing units that we're proposing would primarily be financed with federal and state subsidies, mostly low-income housing tax credits, but other affordable housing funds such as home and housing stabilization funds. And that requires a PNF be sent to Mass Historic for their approval before any federal or state funds are used to do anything on the property. So that's been sent in, and I believe my colleague Joe may have sent a copy of that recent PNF we submitted to the committee. I believe you all should have a copy of that. Okay. And I believe Maureen is on as well, in case any questions that she needs to field come up. So here's the site. Actually, this shows two sites. There's two sites that we were designated to develop for affordable housing. We're here specifically today to talk about 1533 Main Street down here. We believe we've come up with a plan that respects the architecture of the community. Since we developed the plans and since we had been designated the developer, we've continued to meet with different town departments, town staff, to solicit input from the stakeholders to find ways to improve the project. Our intent is to submit for a comprehensive permit, a 40B permit, in the likely January, February this year. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we've solicited as much input from as many community stakeholders as we can. So when we go in, it's more of a collaborative, friendly approach through the permitting process. And ideally, we find ways to make the project better from more input. Some things that's not mentioned here, but our approach to this development, both of the developments, but this one as well, is every unit will have its own individual entrance, so they're townhome style units, although they'll be rental units, and they'll all have laundry facilities in each unit. And that's two things that we pride ourselves in at Penrose, and we try to take that approach with almost all of our developments. Joe, next slide, please. Okay, next slide. So there are existing structures on this property. This shows the main cottage, the Buckley Cottage. That's not the only structure on the property. There's also 3 smaller summer cottages as well. It's a circa 1940 building, 1940. Of course, the year the first McDonald's opened, and I have 5 kids, so we do a lot of McDonald's stops. I have information here. It comes from the Mass Historic website. So there was a Form B completed for this structure. It's in the Historic Business District, but no designation, and it's not on the National Register. Next slide, Joe, please. And here's the 3 smaller cottages on the site. Built a little later, but within the same time frame, and I think still at the number of years where, what is it, 75 years? Yep. So, oh, yes, thanks, Joe. So these are the smaller cottages. Joe, next slide. Those are additional structures on the site. They're sheds. Okay. So this development plan includes the demolition of all those existing structures on the site. This is, I guess, an elevation of the proposed development, showing some of the proposed structures. And I think this is actually a good point for me to turn it over to Paul, so you can walk through the design of the new construction.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Atman. I'm a principal at Union Studio Architecture and Community Design. And Rio's given a nice overview of the project and how we've gotten to this point here today. I just want to walk you through a little bit of the architecture and the site planning. Can we have the next slide, please? This next elevation, as you can see on the lower left key plan, is the elevation of what you would see from the street. We have 2 buildings on either side of the 2 driveway entrances in and out of the neighborhood, flanking on the left and the right. It's 2 stories with a occupied attic with bedrooms facing the main street. And then the community building is a 1-story structure that anchors the middle of the development. And that is designed to maintain a street frontage along Main Street and also give it a front entrance. One comment that was, well, I'll move on. Next slide before we get to some changes. The architecture of the buildings are a combination of townhouse structures with maximum of 3 townhouses attached to one another, as seen in this plan. So it's only a 2-story structure with a pitched roof. They have 2 bedrooms each. The next slide. The larger buildings have 6 units, and they are also on a design so that, as Rio mentioned, every unit has a front door to the outside. So as you can see with the light down here, the lower left, this is the first floor plan, and the 2 ground floor units have their entrance off the main porch, wraps around a center stair, 2 center stairs on either side, and those center stairs are actually the front doors to the unit above. So if you, as tenants and residences open this door, they're in their unit and they ascend their stair to their living room and their 1-bedroom apartment. And those 4 apartments are above those 2 ground floor plans. The architecture is, we believe, very compatible with Chatham and other Cape Cod communities. We've been using the Cape Cod Commission Design Bulletin as our guideline for looking and using historically appropriate materials such as lap siding, double-hung windows, eave return details that are historically designed and correctly and not with the pork chop to cut off the end so that birds will not roost there. We're very sensitive to that. Shed roofs with simple Tuscan or square style columns. And then the double hung windows would be insulated and Energy Star rated. As I should point out that all of the buildings are being designed for Passive House standards and Energy Star certification for energy efficiency. Next, please. This is the other let's say larger building, but this one it has a similar floor plan on the left with a 2-bedroom ground floor unit and 2 one-bedrooms above it. The difference in this building is that there's a front door to 2 apartments that are on the 2nd and 3rd floor facing the other side. And this was strategically done so that in plan, this elevation is on the interior street and this elevation is on Main Street. So the building has 2 front doors on a corner condition. And then, so this is a 3-bedroom on the ground floor and 2 2-bedrooms. You can come up the stairs to your main living, dining, kitchen, and then within another stair, you go up to the 3rd floor, which is just here in this attic for the 2 bedrooms on either side of this demising wall. Next, please. The site plan. So I should have probably orientated you with the site plan first. I apologize. But if we look at the site plan, here's Main Street. Here's the community building. Here's a loop road that brings you in and out of the building, the development and the neighborhood, both ingress and egress, with hammerhead turnarounds for fire apparatus and emergency vehicles. But the center and the core of the neighborhood is this common green with a playground and community gardens. Should the residences have interest in it, there's a possibility to build those. But the community building, the common room, and the management office look out onto the community green, while the fitness room is looking out onto the Main Street. And I should point out that this here is that exact condition I talked to you about a few minutes ago, where this is a side road or the interior road with a big front porch for entrances to the units, and then the other porch facing Main Street. Next. So since the RFP, we've begun to develop the architecture and the plans as well as the site plan. So it's evolving. We have a site survey now in hand that we're going to, the Horsley Witten Group is using to generate the engineering and grading, and then Cortel, the landscape architect, will be then following along with the landscape design. We've added additional parking along the roadway, along the community space as parallel spaces. We've added room for future parking should the need arise at the end of those hammerheads. We've repositioned buildings so that the 3-story portions of a few of the buildings are furthest from neighboring structures. We've decreased the overall length of the community room along Main Street, which I'm sorry to talk about or address a few minutes before, is that community room, the community building was much longer along Main Street, but we've shortened it and pushed the community space, the room, toward the back of the, toward the green, so there's less frontage along Main Street and more volume toward the back of the site, so it's not so perceived to be a long building on Main Street. We've increased road width to accommodate vehicle access from 22 to 24 feet with feedback from the DPW and the town engineers. And then we've identified potential roof locations for solar panels on the roofs of the best roof exposures to, for solar gain. And that is going to be pretty much powering our community space or a common utility bill, correct, Rio?
That's right.
Yeah. Next. So this here is the revised plan. And if you aren't if we don't have it side by side, you may not see it so well, but that's the parallel parking that we added along the common green. The additional parking here that would be preserved. I mean, that tree probably will scooch over so that in the future that's dashed in right there and right there for future parking. And then this here, this salmon color, light salmon color, is the third story portion of those buildings that we created, located them so they're not so close to the neighboring structures. Next. This here is just a diagram showing the roof lines for where the highest ridge point is, and that's indicated by the red lines. The blue lines are the secondary ridge lines, and then the green is the one-story ridge line. Next. The yellow indicates optimal solar exposure for each of the buildings. And once we get into energy modeling, we'll understand which are the better roofs to utilize. This here's the community building. If you can imagine Main Street along here, the fitness room looks out onto it. We have the community room looking out onto the common green with a management office that has eyes onto the community green and a presence toward Main Street. And the same materials. I think we do want to sort of have an architectural detailing that is more Greek revival and a little bit more formal in this part of town than what we are envisioning on Meeting Street, or Meeting House Road, sorry. Next. This here is the revised plan. So as you can see, the plan changed a little bit to shorten the overall length along Main Street and push some of the volume toward the common green, meaning the community room with a wraparound porch and a shared entrance both front and back that is access for the community building, the fitness room, and the management office. And then utility, maintenance, shop, and service is off the side, easy access to one of the drive lanes. Next. And then I think we're open for any questions.
One thing I would add, a lot of those changes that Paul had just walked through, that was the result of meeting with different town staff and different town departments, including the fire department as well. And that's what we're continuing to do. We're looking for feedback from you folks as well, and other groups that we'll be presenting to as well. We appreciate any comments, feedback you have.
I have a question, I guess. Our role here is not our usual one to make a finding of historical significance and, as you've heard, determine whether demolition delay would be in order. So we're not doing our usual function, but just along those lines, the three cottages that you've mentioned, are those are being taken down and for that back row of dwellings?
Correct.
So if we were to say, if we could say, no, you can't demolish the cottages, that's going to take out a whole row of affordable housing.
You could say that.
Yes, it was, we maximized the amount of units we could get on site. And the existing structures were laid out in a way, well, there were two issues. They were laid out in a way where we couldn't design the typical efficient site plan. And then also, there were issues with sustainability and accessibility with reusing them. We are designing the passive house. It would just likely be almost impossible to reuse those small cottages. And even the main cottage, we looked at that for some time in the beginning stages of the RFP as maybe repurposing that as our management space, but that also didn't lay out. We couldn't fit the program that we need to fit in there, and also that we keep our community buildings one story for accessibility reasons. Otherwise, we would have had to put an elevator in, which wouldn't really be feasible, or just not use that space at all. So it didn't really work out. The development plan isn't really able to incorporate those existing structures. Therefore, what we're proposing is to tear them down.
Thanks. Relevant to accessibility, the accessible dwellings are the ones that are the first floor. There's no elevator situation involved, or to get up. I mean,
That's right.
That's correct.
and what proportion of those, I can't do the arithmetic that quickly, what proportion in relative terms are accessible?
5% are required by funding
Right.
resources, but Massachusetts has very strict and stringent accessibility requirements. So we would be exceeding that 5% threshold to meet state regulations. So
And I
anything on the
believe all
ground
the
floor.
first, all the ground floors are visitable. It's
And
not fully
access-
accessible, but.
But a percentage of those are accessible.
All right, so you would be addressing curb cuts and slopes within the house on the first floors, but not necessarily in all of them.
Correct. Because the townhouses, the small three-pack, let's call it,
Right.
that one needs to be visitable, but not accessible. So you still need an accessible route to the front door, so someone can roll in and visit you if you live in that townhouse.
Right.
So, we're now, as I mentioned, we have the site survey in hand. Everyone thinks it's a pretty level, flat site, but once you survey things, you understand the nuances, and they quickly build up to something that could be a challenge, with
Okay.
the small footprints that we have and the tightness and of the parking to the sidewalk and the approach to the front door. We've got some work to do to figure that out, but I think.
Yeah, all
it's
walkways will
achievable.
be
Yeah.
accessible. And Horsley Witten is in the process of designing that right now that they have the topo information from the existing condition survey.
And just another accessibility thing, with regard to door handles and things like that, are those
lever.
modified to be
They'll be all
accessible?
lever
Okay.
operation, yep.
Good. That's what I have at the moment. Anybody else on the commission? Nancy?
Can you tell me what the height is of the highest ridge lines on those, just out of interest?
Yeah, and that's something that it's plus or minus 35 feet. So it's a little bit over the threshold of, I think, the 30 feet maximum on zoning. But as we get the topo in and we start calibrating the building to the existing and proposed grade, that number will get refined. So that's why we've called it in RFP a plus or minus 35 feet.
So that's something the zoning will have to make a decision on?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Have
Joe,
you
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Would it be helpful if we go back to the site plan and you can see the exact buildings the colors where the 35 feet is?
No, I just wondered if you were going to be looking for an exception to our height regulations, just because they looked quite tall.
Yes,
But I don't.
Sorry, I think we will be, and it's
Yep.
really that ridge line on only a portion of a few of the buildings.
Okay.
This ridge line will be
Within the
lower to 30 to 32 feet, so it's really this one that I think we've heard was a concern for some folks.
Okay. Have you considered at all offering, I don't know what kind of condition they're in, but they seem quite small, the three buildings that would have normally come within our purview. Have you considered offering them to be moved if somebody had a property where they could have an accessory structure that might help our housing needs further? I don't know how feasible it is or desirable, but that is something that owners of properties often do when, if they have a historic structure and they don't want it anymore, is to make it available for moving.
I don't believe we have, so we can look into that.
It's just
That's
a
a
thought.
Thanks.
good idea.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
And I have one more question, and I feel like it's a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it. Do you always include a community center with your projects? And it's not that I'm against community centers. I think they're wonderful things, but I just wondered how you figure out balance the needs for housing, more structure, more space for housing against, having a gym available or something like that. I wondered. I wondered.
Joe, could you go back to the floor plan, the revised floor plan for the community building? So, to answer your question, yes, it's not always an independent structure. We prefer it to be one, but that's not always the case.
But you
Sometimes,
do
like-
always have one? Like,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, because we definitely need, I mean, we need this space.
Oh, you have to come to the,
You need the microphone. There-
you can use the, here's the pointer.
Oh, yes, thank you, sorry about that. So this space here is necessary to operate the property and manage it. You know, it's maintenance storage, and the maintenance shop will have on-site maintenance, on-site staff. This is, where's the manager's office? Right here is social services office, although we've changed the name now, we call it community impact coordinators. But those provide services to the residents who may need them. Where, am I just missing the manager's office? Oh, right here.
Right there.
It was right in front of me. This is the manager's office. We have to have a separate room for file storage, because especially with the tax credit units, you collect people's information like tax returns and employee records. So we have to keep that stuff secure and on site. So really all of this space is necessary. Here's the lobby, waiting room for people coming in to visit the manager. And this space really is the amenities. Well, this is the public restrooms, but typically we include fitness rooms. They tend to be the amenities that are used the most. It kind of depends on maybe the demographics of the people who will be living there. We almost always include this community room, and that's, you know, a room that really a large multi-purpose room with a kitchenette. Residents will have, you know, birthday parties there, stuff like that. Homework help for kids after school, in communities with lots of children, all different type of events to be held. You know, that's really the event room for the property. We're not presenting meeting house here, but in that case, we're not able to fit a standalone building like this. So it's being incorporated into one of the residential buildings, but this is more ideal. Well, we believe this works better. And this site, it was a little larger and able to fit it, as opposed to our meeting house site, which was a very difficult site because of grading. We have a very similar, I'm sure folks might not be familiar with the project Village at Nauset Green in Eastham. That was a project we recently developed in 2022. And this is a very similar building to what we have there. In case anyone's interested in seeing a real-life version of what we're proposing, it's very similar.
And that's all funded by the rents that come in? It's not like an additional levy to join the gym?
No, that's right, that's right.
Okay, thanks for explaining that to me.
Anybody else? Neil, okay. Are you looking for something from the Historic Commission to go to the zoning board as part of that process?
Nothing official. You know, through the comp permit, all other local jurisdictions get waived, so it's just the ZBA that hears. But we're taking a collaborative approach because this is a town-owned property. And so we thought it made sense to come and present, to get your feedback on ways we can improve the development or stuff like Nancy, you mentioned reusing the existing sheds, stuff that we hadn't thought of, that the town would like to see. And
Does Gloria want to comment on that process?
Anyways, you know, that might just kind of get our opinion.
I guess we were just, My opinion would be that maybe we just give our opinion by the commissioners as if this had come to before us as to whether we felt the buildings that are within our purview that are 75 years or older, the one on the main street is not within, it's HBDC, as you said, the main house, but the other structures that are 75 years or older, I just thought maybe we could give our opinions on whether we consider them historically significant, and if they would fall under a demolition delay if we did have jurisdiction. But that's just my thought.
Well, it's not a bad idea. I did not approach looking at them from that point of view, however, so I would be wary of doing that now.
Excuse me, Bob.
Yeah.
There is a letter from MHC in your packet that is requesting your comment on this matter.
Right.
The reason the three cottages are, they're not on our agenda or anything like that because of the waivers, but by the time they demolish the third one that was built in 1950, it will be 75 years old.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the thinking of the commission on sending something to zoning saying we think the three cottages may well be historically significant and some effort should be made to find another use for them?
I wouldn't agree that they were historically significant.
No, I said maybe.
Oh, well, okay.
I agree with you. Janet?
No, having visited the property, and I did look at them with that view of whether or not they'd be historically significant, because I didn't know that we weren't supposed to. So anyway, they're in rough shape, and I think it's more important to have, I don't think they're historically significant. Nobody, one of our founders didn't live there. They didn't, I think they were rentals, and it's more important to have this community in our community, and we have the greatest need for people that can live here. So I would not consider them historically significant.
Robert?
Yeah, all we'd be doing is just delaying the process, and this is already a lengthy process, so I visited the site. I don't think they're historically significant compared to what we're trying to accomplish in the big picture.
I can't disagree. There's a hand raised online. Do you want to join? You're not online.
Yes, hello. My name is Steve Buckley. I'm personal representative for the Buckley Estate, and we sold the property to the town of Chatham specifically for affordable housing. And I lived on the property with my wife for 7 years, leaving about 15 years ago. So, and having grown up in Chatham myself, yes, I'm very sensitive personally to having this be something that we'll be glad that we did. So I appreciate the opportunity to give a couple of thoughts to this as far as how to make it look the best and also act as a genuine and respectable, I guess you could say, neighborhood where people are living together as neighbors, not just a place to sleep. And so anyway, I was going to ask if I'm looking at the picture online here and it shows the street view there, and I heard the speakers talk about townhouses, and yes, I did live in a Washington D.C. suburb for 15 years in townhouses, so I had always thought that a townhouse look would be appropriate for this property. And but I'm wondering if had been any thought given to whether or not, as I look at these buildings now, you have a big, large building, and it just looks like a big, large building. If there'd been any thought to having different siding colors, so they looked actually like townhouses, and not just a mass, things like that. Otherwise, I like the looks of the buildings. It's just that they could look more like townhouses as opposed to just large buildings. And I just wanted to know Before you go on to that, though, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the fact that there will be a room for people to have birthdays, because the size of the units would be, yes, anything in a birthday party, somebody's unit, it would be very crowded to do that. So I'm glad there's going to be a common room. And at the same time, I'm assuming that in situations like that, where there's like a birthday party or some social event, that people will be able to drop off their kids. And I'm wondering if there isn't, it looks like there might even be space off the main road for a pull-off, or so that people can, get out of the way of traffic, or not even block people who are parking. They don't have to pull in and park in somebody's parking spot and so forth. So anyway, the idea that there could be a pull-off spot off the main road. There's a little place there that looks like it could be, and it could even be used for a bus stop as well. And the last thing is, there's a large, what looks like an evergreen, and in the middle, towards the rear of the property, and it looks like a giant Christmas tree. And it would be a shame if that got cut just because. And I was wondering, I saw there was a landscape architect, I think, Mr. Warfel. I was wondering if they'd looked at whether or not that tree or any tree, large tree, could be kept. But that one in particular would be really nice. Of course, it would be nice to have like a giant Christmas tree, evergreen type Christmas tree in the middle of your property to make it look more, like it wasn't built yesterday. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Ms. Briggs, you have a comment again?
Hi, Ellen Briggs, Protect Our Past. I understand the house is going to be demolished, and then we've got these 3 structures you're questioning. Could they be offered up for salvage? A lot of people collect salvage materials, and then it's not ending up in the dumpster. So I hope you consider that.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely consider that. I will note, we just recently had a hazardous materials investigation done on homes, and I think there's lead paint, which isn't as big of an issue, but some asbestos as well. And it may be potential liabilities issues there with maybe transferring it, but to the extent that, there's no, exposure with these hazardous materials, I think that would be a great idea if they can be salvaged.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to speak, Bob. I'd like to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. First, thank you for all this work. This is amazing what you've done, and thank you for coming before the commission so we can at least get our 2 cents worth in. Do I have it right that these will be transitional homes for families that want to get a foothold in our community where they can't afford to buy yet, and they would come here for some period of time, and then the idea would be to transition them out into buying or leasing in the area?
No, permanent housing.
This would be
Permanent,
permanent.
Yeah.
So
Unless, if they seek to leave, of course, or, life
Okay.
events happen. But
so they would own their building? They would,
no,
they would
it would
lease
be
right?
rental. But usually, maybe we're getting confused with the term transitional. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's a, certain description that's like a way station from transitioning somebody out from a shelter temporarily to move on to something else. This isn't that,
isn't exactly what I meant, but
Yeah.
at any rate, so folks could come here and lease as long as they could make the payments, they could stay as long as they liked, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And,
we prefer longer-term tenants, right? And actually, at Village at Nauset Green, we've had very low turnover.
Nauset Green, is that the name of the place in Eastham?
Yeah, that's right, in Eastham.
So we can go look at that, right? I did a little quick math here. Maybe you could help me. Sorry to belabor this, but there's going to be 16 one-bedrooms, 26 two-bedrooms, and 6 three-bedrooms. So I did some quick math, and I said that there'd be 2 people in the one-bedrooms, there'd be 3 people in the two-bedrooms, and that there'd be 4.5 people in the 3 bedrooms. and I came up with 111 people on the property, plus the 2 employees. And a lot of these folks will have automobiles. And based on direct experience that I have, I know you have way, way, way more experience, so this is really more of a question. But so I'm not too excited about the density, and I'm even less excited about the amount of parking that's available. What happened in the situation that I'm most familiar with is that the families grew up, the kids turned 16, they either got cars or they shared cars with a second car with a household member. And so all of a sudden, overnight, the community, the cars almost doubled. And all of their friends were getting licenses right about the same time. So we had a massive parking problem, and it was a problem virtually at every meeting. Where do we put these cars? So I'd ask you to really look at that. And then a key question that I'd like you to answer, is there something to do with funding where this high density, there's some threshold where we have to put so many people here in order to get the funding?
Not in order to get the funding, I would say. To be more competitive to get the funding, but also when we go, typically it's for Penrose and also our other competitors, it typically begins to make economic sense at around 60 units. And the reason for that is...
Could you back up? It makes economic sense around 60 townhomes?
Yes.
Okay.
So usually we don't ever go below that. And that's because there's a lot of expenses that will be the same if you have 10 units or 60 units, right?
Yep.
If you have 12 units, we'll still need a maintenance. We'll still need a staff. That usually around 60 is when it becomes efficient enough that it works for us. Now, this is below what we typically do. This will work for us because we're also doing meeting house as well. And the way we see it, there'll be some economies of scale of having them both. And the idea is our development approach is that they would be built simultaneously together. They might be financed separately, but the timing would be similar. I think we're going to be going into ZBA with one first and then the other. And the financing applications might be staggered, but the idea is, once funding's in place for both, would do them both together or one immediately after the other.
Okay. I have no question with your competence or anything like that. What I'm just concerned about is the density, 111 people living on a little less than 4 acres. I'm for sustainable housing or affordable housing or subsidized housing, whatever you want to call it. So I'm for the project. I'm not necessarily for the number of people that are going to be in that little spot. Seems like they're shoehorned in.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else in the public here want to chime in? All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, one last thing, Steve Buckley again.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, it was a mention of perhaps salvaging the cottages or buildings. And having lived there, I can attest, having crawled underneath those buildings to try to keep them in shape while living there. Yes, the cottages are not in very good shape. But we did have one of the sheds is a post and beam shed that we had built maybe 20 years ago, but it's solid, post and beam. And we had it moved from the rear of the property to the front with the idea of having it attached as an accessory dwelling unit, potentially, to the main house. So it's right behind the main house now. We had it temporarily moved. It's sitting on cinder blocks, so it can be picked up and moved to wherever it's going to go. And that could certainly be, I would like to suggest, and I have suggested to other town officials, the idea of somehow using offering that for free or some, way of being able to repurpose that, because it's in great shape interior. It's not going to fall apart, like I said, post and beam. Just needs some shingling, and it'll be, and then so forth and so on. So anyway, I just wanted to point out there is one very good salvageable building there for an ADU that could find a new home somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. All right, I think we're through with this topic unless there's, yes, sir. Mr. Levitt.
Let me move this a little bit. Thank you. I'm Rick Levitt. My wife and I live as abutting this property on our home off Barn Hill Road. We have been strong supporters of this development from the beginning, when it first came to town meeting 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I just want to emphasize, and listening to your comments, that this is an historic area. It is within the historic business district, and surrounding it are 4 homes that have been, homes and buildings that have been restored. The West Chatham Primary School was built in 1876, and it abuts it right on the east side of this property. The Daniel Harding store and post office was built in 1882. That's the old Southwester, now the Dunkin' Donuts. Captain Nathan Harding's home and barn was built in 1905. That's currently the Fishermen's Alliance building. And the Levitt home, my home, the original cottage was well over 100 years old when we developed it. We did not tear it down. We restored it. We have asked Ned Collins, the architect, to do the project. He did a wonderful job, and you gave us a restoration award for it. All of those properties that I just described, the historic properties, are of course in Nancy's book. I just simply want to stress that as we do this project, it's going to be very important for us and for this community to respect the historic character, what we call the legacy of our historic homes here in Chatham. Thank you. Just one thing. I was under the impression that the main home was indeed within over 75 years old.
It is, but that's HBDC.
Historic Business District.
Yeah, when HBDC sees it.
HBDC will be.
Yes.
Right, all right,
They'll be listening to what you have to say more intently. Okay, I think we're going to excuse you guys, and we can move on to a few other items of business.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitcomb and Mr. Bystrom have been patiently waiting.
I guess it's good afternoon now. My name is David Whitcomb. I'm the chairman of the Chatham Cemetery Commission. With me today is my fellow commissioner, Bill Bystrom, and our administrative assistant, Quinn Foreman. We're here to ask for your support for our CPC application that I believe you all have a copy of, and we'd like to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you have a copy of them? We
Yes.
have maps, additional maps. We're more than happy to give one to every member.
I think we've got a map in this package, yes.
Yeah, you have those. Thank you. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Any questions from you guys? This is quite thorough, obviously. And can't remember what you were Asking for.
$50,035.
$50,000, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry, you must have this on some kind of, I would imagine you're assessing the cemeteries, which are amazing historical resources for the town. Is this come up like where you're going through the town and you kind of go cemetery by cemetery and you expect that there'll be, these types of restoration projects coming up on a regular basis? Or how do you, just in a nutshell?
Yes, we have a cemetery restoration plan that we're trying to follow. 2 years ago in 2023, we went to town meeting and received $35,000 to do the same kind of work, headstone restoration in Seaside Cemetery. And if any of you have been down Kroll Road and looked up to the right, you can see the evidence of what we've been able to do. So this is it's actually our third time coming before the CPC, which we have done, to get funding for. This is a particular section of Union Cemetery. If you're familiar with Union Cemetery, as you drive up the main road, there are trees on either side. Section B starts at Main Street and goes about halfway up, and then Section A is on the right of Section B. And there's about a total of 127 lots that that this estimate will repair and restore.
And do you make these, this is a little bit of an aside, but are the maps and the listings available on your website? Or is it only, I know that the library has binders that have information, but I did wonder if somebody was looking for a map or information on the cemeteries, is that available on the website of the commission?
That's one of the things that we're working on, is trying to get all of our information digitized, and that's a big effort. We have the maps at our office on Kroll Road, if anybody wanted to see them.
If someone was looking for a grave, would they call up the department? Is that what
They'd
they
call
would
up
do?
Quinn at the Cemetery Commission, and he would be able to, he would take their information, and we have 4 active cemeteries and 11 inactive cemeteries, so he would be able to tell them what's available and show them, if they were interested in looking at them.
Yeah, because I've been helping people with genealogy and research, and I have a lot of people asking to find people from, 1800, and where the cemetery is, but, you kind of have to try to figure out, and the maps aren't always easily available online. That would be a really great benefit, I think, for the public.
Yeah, we do have on our website, there's a gravestones on all of Cape Cod. Chatham is one of the
Yes.
towns. I don't know if you've seen that, but
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
mostly 1800,
Yep.
the 1800s people that were
Yeah.
buried here. Then the Atwood House has extraordinarily amount of information if
Yeah.
you really want to trace a family, some
Yeah.
of the sea captains on down. So there is a lot of information out there we're
Yeah.
trying to gather together.
Yeah, I think the maps were the thing that I was having the most trouble. The library also has binders with all the listings of all the cemeteries and with the maps.
So you would like to see the maps online then?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah. I think that would help people.
I think we can do that.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody, a few in the audience have anything to say? Anybody online?
Yes, I'm in support of this.
I would just like to thank you for all of your work and your effort. Our cemeteries deserve the help you're giving them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We feel the same way, and it's a long process, and we're biting it off cemetery by cemetery. These are the oldest monuments in Union Cemetery, and there's quite a lot of history in some of these monuments that we are going to be restoring.
Janet?
I would just add that the Seaside, the work you did there is fabulous. It's a wonderful job. It really was really needed, and it's very important work you're doing, and I would support it.
Thank you.
The funding.
Is that a motion that the commission write a letter to the CPC to support this?
I move that the Chatham Historical Commission write a letter to the Community Preservation Committee supporting the application from the
Chatham Cemetery Commission.
the Cemetery Commission in support of their application for funding.
Second.
Okay, quick roll call. Janet? Robert?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Stephanie has left. Nancy?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes also. I will commune with our regular chair about who writes the letter, but we will do that.
I'm sorry, Frank, we didn't see Frank this morning. I know him quite well.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks, guys. Sorry I had to wait for so long. All right. we're done with it. All right. Quickly, we have two administrative approvals to deal with. One is 277 Old Harbor Road, which is one in which a car had a little altercation with the house, and it's being rebuilt in the manner at which it was before the car intruded. And we have 73 Main Street, unit number 8, which is upstairs unit of the Hammond House next to the lighthouse, that's doing some window work. I've had a look at both, and I'm in favor of the approval being granted. So I will make a motion that both of them be approved and hope there's a second, and then we can,
Second.
that's our clerk. All right. Janet?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes also. I don't think I have anything to contribute on the old business, nor in the, I don't have an update on it. Oh, well, there is on the Nickerson Homestead, Nickerson Family Association. Subsequent to the last discussion, 2 meetings ago, I guess, there was a meeting with representatives of the Chatham Conservation Foundation, the Nickerson family, and Frank and I attended. We did agree that some changes could be made to the name and of the organization to incorporate more respectful mention of the indigenous community. And the director of the Conservation Foundation has been in contact with them, and as of last Friday, I think, when I spoke to her, there's been no closure from that group. There's a number of tribal names involved with different spellings, and there's issues that I don't begin to understand, but we're working on getting folks together to modify the application somewhat, or the draft application, and then get back to PAL with our suggestions. Any other comments on the? I don't know what's going on with the Monomoy Theater or whatever, except it's somewhere in court land. All right, I will entertain a motion to end this. Clerk?
So moved.
Second.
Janet?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Stephanie? Not here. Nancy?
Yes.
And Vice Chair votes yes. Thank you all for your patience with the Vice Chair.